this question might not apply to you. I ask this of all filmmakers, but I would imagine a lot of people want to be in business with you. But maybe if you could get the financing for any project you want to make, what would you make and why?
I've been really lucky in my career in that I've gotten to make a lot of the movies that were in my heart. And I don't think I want to spoil the ones I'm thinking of making. I don't know. I mean, like, people really hated on Gus Van Sant when he remade Psycho. But I understand that. I understand the desire to know what it feels like to set up those shots and just to know what it feels like to make that movie. It's very selfish and very personal, but there's all kinds of movies that I love that I would want to know just what it feels like to actually make them, no matter the outcome. So if I could just go make a shot-for-shot remake of Ferris Bueller just to know what it felt like, I think that would be a lot of fun. But it would be a completely selfish endeavor, and I admit going in that it would never be as good as the original.
Okay. If someone has never seen anything that you've directed, what do you want them to start with and why?
If someone was going to watch one film of mine, I suppose I'd want them to watch Young Adult. There's a coarse truth to that film that I really believe in. I think it's a film that I kind of made at my bravest.
Same question, but about your dad's movies.
And if you're going to watch one movie of my father's, I think you either got to watch Dave or you got to watch Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is absolutely iconic. It's a perfect film. But the storytelling level on Dave is off the charts. And from a filmmaking point of view, I think it's my favorite of my father's films.
I love Dave. Dave is fantastic. Which of your films changed the most in the editing room in a way that you weren't expecting?
I don't know. Probably Thank You for Smoking, because it was my first movie. I had the least amount of experience. It has the most deleted scenes. I was still figuring it out. I mean, I'm still figuring it out now, but on Thank You for Smoking, I had made short films, I had made commercials, but I was still learning how to make a movie. And so there were the most mistakes, and there was I probably had to reorder the most and cut the most.
What would you want to see in a Ghostbusters ride if you had the control to sort of dictate the way it went?
Oh my God, like at a theme park?
Yeah.
Amazing question. All right, so the chase sequence in Ghostbusters Afterlife with Phoebe hanging out the side of Ecto 1, flying around corners trying to catch Muncher. I mean, that is something I want to live. I want to know what it feels like to hang out the side of the car. I made it because I'm trying to relive fantasies of riding in the DeLorean or riding on speeder bikes on Endor and Return of the Jedi. So if I could know what it felt like, there's that great ride at Universal Orlando. It's a Hogwarts ride where you're on Hagrid's a motorbike with the sidecar. And if we could do something like that with Ecto 1, so down.
Okay, I'm thinking about this, and I would love to have the proton pack and do everything that she does. That would be fantastic. So jumping back, I am curious, when did you actually realize that you really did want to make a Ghostbusters movie? Like, what was that moment? You know what I mean? That hit you?
It's a combination of moments, is the truth. I obviously had been asked my whole life, would I ever make a Ghostbusters movie? And I think I always thought that people wanted to see my Ghostbusters movie, but maybe that was just my ego talking. What people really wanted was just a Ghostbusters movie. They wanted to see someone pick up the proton pack again. They wanted to see Ecto 1 fly around the corner again. They want to see those guys standing next to each other again. And it came to me through this girl. I imagined this 12-year-old girl standing in a field with a proton pack. And it was only later that I realized that this was Egon Spengler's granddaughter. And once I knew who she was, that journey started to build in my mind, and I pitched it to my father, and he loved it. And it was, I think, probably watching my father's reaction as he heard the story that made me want to tell it.
How did you end up connecting with Gil to write the screenplay?
Well, Gil Kenan and I met playing hockey together 15 years ago, if you can imagine. And we fast became very good friends. Our daughters are the same age. We began writing together. We wrote a movie for DreamWorks Animation together, and we adapted a book for Amazon together. So we already had experience working together and really trusted each other's brains. And I was pitching him my thoughts on a Ghostbusters movie, and he really responded to them. We started to go back and forth on it. And he's part of the reason I got the confidence to actually tell the story.
There's always obviously other ideas that almost made it in the script. Were there any like big things that you ended up coming up with that you're like, oh, this is great, but yeah, we can't use this?
Tons of ideas. And I'm not going to tell you them because I'm hoping to save them for other movies. But look, when we started making a script for Ghostbusters Afterlife, which was originally called Rust City, we had all kinds of ideas we wanted to get in there. We were making lists of anything we'd ever want to see in a Ghostbusters movie. And one of them was a car chase. A car chase with someone hanging out the side with a proton pack. And other ideas were unmakeable at this point, but hopefully in the future.
You mentioned Rust City. So basically it was originally Ghostbusters Rust City, then it became Afterlife. Like was it ever another title?
No, Rust City was kind of our code name. We knew that these projects required code names. We were writing it in secrecy. We knew that it needed some other name. And Rust City, of course, came from the Selenium mine. This is a movie that, really is comes out of the foundry and selenium mine that led to the building of Dana's apartment building in 1984.
Yeah, I do like that connective tissue. But I am curious, was it ever another name but Ghostbusters Afterlife that you really considered? Or once you got that name, that was it?
No, once we got that name, that was it. I mean, in moving off of Rust City, we had to come up with a real name for it. And we did toss around some ideas, but Afterlife quickly led to the top.
You've worked with your DP, Eric, on many movies. How did you come up with the look that you wanted for this film? I'm guessing you could just talk about working with Eric and how you decided on that.
Certainly. I mean, look, Eric and I met when we were teenagers. We worked with each other forever. We have just a common language at this point. In approaching Ghostbusters Afterlife, we wanted something that not only echoed Ghostbusters and, the stunning cinematography of Laszlo Kovacs, but really the look of films that we grew up with. So we're talking about the Amblin films of the 80s. I mean, this is the movies that Eric and I watched when we were, 10, 11, 12 years old, talking about E.T., talking about Gremlins, talking about Back to the Future, and there's a warmth and a nostalgia to those films that makes you feel like you lived them even if you had not. And that's the look we wanted Ghostbusters Afterlife to have.
You have one of these things that you had to do, you and Gil, with the screenplay, is you had to thread that needle of making the movie work for people that have never seen Ghostbusters. And you need to also make it work for the people like me who grew up on Ghostbusters.
Right.
At what point did you possibly rage quit and say, this is impossible? I'm joking, but it's like you managed to do it, but it's a really hard task.
It's very kind of you. And certainly we felt like we wanted to make a movie for everybody. We wanted to make a movie that was there, whether it was the 100th time you were seeing a Ghostbusters movie, or if this was the first Ghostbusters movie you ever saw. We wanted this experience to work for you. And that included embracing everything about the original recipe, the car, the pack, the music, the sound effects, the guys. But it also included introducing a new family in a new location on a family journey instead of one of opening up a business. It was a tricky thing to weave because you're right. There's Ghostbuster fans who are checking the boxes to make sure you hit everything. And there's people who want a completely new experience to this, who want to meet new people.
100%. I love some people, the mini Stay Puffs, obviously I had a blast with, and I love how brutal you are with them in the movie. And I'm just curious, did anyone ever say to you, okay, I think you're killing them a little too hard in this?
No. I mean, God knows, I had much more demonic ideas for these little guys than we got to put on screen. I mean, if I can make the R-rated version of the Mini Puffs, I think it would be a delight for me and maybe a few others. But honestly, Sony was so supportive of the film we wanted to make. They really got what we were trying to do here. And we felt an incredible amount of freedom to explore what a Ghostbusters movie was, what the taxonomy of the ghosts were, how to recreate things like the Terror Dogs. And it was a thrill to work with this group of 100 artisans and craftspeople and actors who all loved the original and just wanted to know what it felt like to be inside a Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah, I believe you had a practical, like of the dog, like you had these big practical puppets, if you will, or I'm using the wrong terminology.
No, animatronics, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, who has them and what do I need to do to get one?
Well, so the thing with these prosthetics is that the structures inside them are very robust, but of course the skin is made out of latex and it disintegrates. So I'm not sure if you'll be able to get a hold of any of them. I'm sure that Arian, the creator, who of course did Pan's Labyrinth and many other films, he probably has one somewhere in, cold storage.
Yeah, I'm totally joking around, obviously, but I think it'd be awesome outside my front door.
I know you're looking for where you need to break into to steal one of these things.
100%. No matter how much money you have, no matter how long your schedule, there's always going to be things that sort of can't get done. I'm just curious, what were some of the big obstacles you faced in trying to make this movie with the budget and time you had?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there is a way that people have gotten used to making movies these days, and that is on green screen with only computer effects. And we wanted to make a movie that balanced the bleeding edge of technology with real old school Hollywood filmmaking. So it meant building sets, building complete sets like the temple and the big farmhouse, so that set pieces happen with actors inside them who were integrated into the actual environments in real life. It meant using old school effects that maybe some people had to relearn how to use, old wire stuff, smoke stuff, using dry ice, using mirrors, using magnets. And the fun thing is that all these technicians, the reason they went into filmmaking is because they love this old stuff. They used to read Cinefex magazine. They want to actually pull all this stuff off. So it became this fun challenge of how can you do this the way they did it back in '84?
Guillermo is famous for always, when he's building stuff for his movies, to always build an extra one for his collection. And I'm just curious if
I've heard about the houses.
Oh, I've seen it firsthand and it's amazing. But I'm just curious if you built any proton packs or anything for this movie that you said, let's just build one more because I need it at my house.
We didn't have the budget for that, but also.
Oh, you have it right. Wait, what?
I am a good pickpocket.
Right, I thought you were going to pull out like the ghost trap right there and be like,
no.
So basically, you're saying you might have borrowed some stuff from set.
I'm not saying that. You're saying that.
I understand, and you should definitely tweet some photos just so we can all see them. So one of the things you worked with 2 editors on this, and I'm just curious, Nathan and Dana, and I'm just curious, why 2 editors, and did someone work on one thing? Could you explain?
Absolutely. Look, this is a bigger movie than I've ever made, and it involved a combination of just humor, thrill, scare. There's a car chase in it. I mean, it was a whole mix of things, and some of which I'd never done before. And I got to work with 2 editors that I absolutely love. Dana Glauberman, who I've been working with ever since Thank You for Smoking, who I knew because she was actually an assistant in my father's editorial back in the day. And Nate Orloff, who kind of joined me on Frontrunner and on Tully, who cut one of my favorite sequences in Tully, the montage of the first 6 months in a child's life, and together they made the perfect editing team. They split up all the work evenly. There was always this kind of give or take about who would be right for the right sequence. Then they would pass it back to each other, and I loved it. I hope I get to work with both of them again exactly the same way.
I always ask this of filmmakers. I think I've probably asked it of you in the past. How long was your first cut compared to the finished film?
Oh my God. The first cut was easily over 3 hours, and now we're down to I think 1 hour 56 with credits. So it's way more slim.
Do you mean, when you say that number, you mean that's like the assembly cut?
Yeah, that's the assembly cut.
What was your cut that you were like, oh, this is really good, I don't know how we're going to get it shorter?
Yeah. I don't think I ever feel that way. I mean, even a month ago, we showed the movie at CinemaCon, and my father leaned over to me at one point during the screening, and I thought he was going to tell me how proud of me he was, and instead he gave me a note. And we opened up the film a week later and like took another few seconds out of the film. So we are always making little tweaks, but I promise now it is done.
So the recent trailer that you released has a few shots that are not in the finished film.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious, how many deleted scenes did you actually end up with?
You know, I feel like there's more deleted moments than deleted scenes. There are a few deleted scenes, and you can look forward to seeing them on however you watch movies at home.
We're talking a Reitman cut, or we're just talking about deleted scenes?
No, this is the Reitman cut. You know, I know that directors have a tendency to do those longer director's cuts, but I always prefer the original film. I think there's usually a reason where you got to where you did, and except for certain specific cases. I am proud of the released version of each one of my movies. And if anything, I would always just make them shorter.
Finn told me earlier that there was a oneer that you shot of him going out that actually isn't in the movie, or unless I'm mistaken. Am I wrong about this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was this really delightful oneer that over at Spinners that started with him cleaning up the place and followed him running out the door and jumping into a truck that was barely coming to a stop. And it was fun. I mean, obviously on set, there's nothing more joyful than working on a complicated oneer. Front Runner was my most thrilling experience with that. And I'm sure it always upsets the actor after work on all that choreography.
No, he loved the cut. He was just like, no, but there was a great shot that we did that I loved. Just didn't make, you know what I mean?
Well, Finn is a budding filmmaker. So he's writing screenplays, he's directing short films. And it was awesome just to talk with Finn about directing and the kind of stuff he's going to make one day.
Final question. Do you, no, not the whole interview, just of the deleted scenes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should be specific. Do you think it's like 5 to 10 minutes of stuff that you're putting on the Blu-ray? Do you actually know?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll leave it there. So you mentioned Easter eggs. I've noticed a few of them when I was watching it. Yeah. Are there any really hard to find Easter eggs in the movie that you want to give fans a hint?
I mean, there are Easter eggs so hard to find that I don't even know they're in there yet. You got to remember, I wasn't the only one putting them in there. We got set deck, we got prop makers, we got visual effects artists. Everyone was putting in the tiniest details. It begins with literally the opening logo of the film, where Will Files, the sound designer, is already placing sounds, actual sound files he pulled from 1984 to put into this movie. We're talking about pieces of music owned Martineau, the instrument that sounds like a theremin in the original score, that were placed into the opening shot. If you're looking for the hard to find ones, one of my favorite lines in the original film is Egon saying, as a child, I had half a slinky and I straightened it. So there is a straightened slinky somewhere in the movie. The ghost sniffer that Venkman uses when he goes to Dana's apartment in the original film, that can be spotted in the background somewhere. Egon's updated PKE meter from Ghostbusters 2 also could be spotted somewhere in the film. The housekeeping tag from Venkman's office at Columbia University can be spotted somewhere in the film. But I mean, if you start getting down to it, there is an incredible level of detail just like really buried in the background.
The film has post-credit scenes. This is where we're getting into the more spoilery stuff that I would run later. So I'm curious, did you know that it was going to be those two post-credit scenes early on, or how did you decide on those?
I don't want to talk about the post-credit scenes yet.
Okay, moving on to the next then. So I'm wondering what I can add. Okay, so I'll ask you this. You wrapped on this a while ago. When did you actually wrap on the movie?
Wrap shooting?
Yeah, like I guess let me say it like this. Did you have a good enough time making this film that if it is a huge hit and Sony called you and said, do you have another idea, that you'd want to do a sequel? Because I'm just curious, like I have to ask those questions because there's going to be fans who are going to watch this and love it and then hope that you're going to maybe want to do another.
I mean, this is what I'll say is the intent of Ghostbusters Afterlife is to set the table for more Ghostbusters movies. You know, I love the Ghostbusters mythology. I know a lot of filmmakers do. I'd love to see more films from other filmmakers in this universe. Every culture has their own relationship with ghosts. And I want to see all of those movies.
So you could see yourself essentially becoming a steward of the franchise, hoping to get other filmmakers to have a take on it.
You know, really what I wanted to do with this film was create that platform, create that opening. And I have to kind of tip my hat to Paul Feig, because he's the one who really broke the doors down. He's the one who said a Ghostbusters movie could be something different than the original two. And I'm standing on his shoulders. He created the runway so that I could make this film. And hopefully I'm creating the runway so others can make more.
Yeah, I like what Paul did with the material. I liked what you did with the material. I think that it's just a ripe universe. I'm going to say this in a careful way. Hopefully you will answer. The ending of this movie has a setup for a possibility of something. Do you have an answer to that? Or when you include something like that, do you sort of say, we'll figure it out later?
I have an answer.
I'm trying to ask it in a way that you know what I mean, that you'll, you know what I mean. Fuck, man. So let me ask, I'll save the other spoiler questions for later, because I really do want to ask you about the ending of CGI and whatnot. You know what I'm talking about.
I'll say this, and here's an answer I'm comfortable giving, and this is an answer you can use now and don't need to wait. Ghostbusters Afterlife is obviously a balance of bleeding edge technology and old techniques that go back to the beginning of Hollywood. And the end of the movie required the most talented visual effects artists working at the limits of their ability. That this movie, for it to work, ends on something that is different than how a normal big tentpole movie ends. And I was nervous from day one of whether or not we were going to be able to pull it off. And it required brilliant artists, much more talented and intelligent than myself, to do it. And the fact that the end of the movie works stands on their shoulders.
The ending of the movie is fantastic. And I really, that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, is the blending of that VFX of what you did. And I'm just curious, at what point did you actually realize this will work? Because if it doesn't work, the whole thing it's going to be an issue.
Very late in the process.
Oh, really?
Yes.
God, I've spoken to other filmmakers, and they've said that, I think even James Gunn said on The Suicide Squad with King Shark, that they had a version, and that almost at the end, he's like, this is not working. We need to do it a completely different way. Yeah,
I won't say that. It's not as though it wasn't working and then it was. I will say that it was a very gradual process. And I can't go more into it without giving away too much, but it is a gradual process that took 2 years. And for me, the results are magical.
Do you know what you're going to do next? Have you been writing?
I have been writing.
I kind of figured you would.
But I don't know what will be next.
Is it one of these things where you're working on like multiple screenplays to see what's going to be the one, or do you tend to write one thing at a time?
You know, I have a tendency to write one thing at a time. I'm really fortunate in that in the last few years, you know, I have found Gil Kenan as a writing partner, and we write a lot together now, and we work on, you know, things intended for either of us to direct. He's also obviously a prominent filmmaker, and we are always kicking the tires on ideas.
I'm talking to Gil tomorrow about this movie. Is there anything I should ask him specifically that maybe he won't be expecting, or a fun story that he might want to talk about?
I mean, you know, he brought this up last night at Comic-Con, but, you know, when Gil arrived in America at the age of 7, the first film he ever saw in a theater was Ghostbusters. And the fact that that kind of kicked off his fascination with movies, and eventually he became the co-writer of this film, is such a wonderful life arc. Ask him whatever you want. He's such an articulate filmmaker, and you know, he's an animator. You know, his career started with working with Spielberg and Zemeckis, which is just insane. I don't know. Ask him what position he plays in hockey.
I've spoken to Gil before, but I didn't know about the hockey thing. I have to stop here, but right. But in all seriousness, though, at some point in the future, when you are comfortable about talking specifics, I would really love to talk specifics about stuff, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a whole fun story to it.
Yeah, but listen, congrats on the movie, man. And
Thank you.
I really do hope it's a huge hit. Sincerely.
Thank you very much.
Cool. I gotta go. Have a great day.
Bye bye.